Let's call the City of Milton Common Council meeting to order Wednesday, November 7th, 2018 at 6:04 p.m. And can we have confirmation of appropriate meeting notice?
The agenda was posted at Dave's Ace Hardware, Piggly Wiggly, and Milton City Hall.
Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. And let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't have a voice. Public comments regarding items which can be affected by council action. Has anybody signed up? Okay. 5, discussion and possible action regarding a change to the city's dental insurance program.
So this is a topic of conversation that we'll have this evening. First on the agenda, Gina Erickson is here. She is our representative from Tricor, which is in essence, our business agent in the insurance world. So they assist us greatly with the implementation of our insurance plan, the research of our insurance plan, the execution of our insurance plan. They act as a customer service liaison to our employee base and to us in the administration when working through the sometimes unnavigable waters that is the healthcare system. And Gina and Stacy are beyond excellent in what they do for us. So Gina's here to help us kind of walk through this process. But through the budget process and for a while now, one of the things that we continually look at is ways that we can potentially not only save the city money, but also hopefully save the employees money either immediately or down the road. And one of the things that Dan has been investigating for quite some time is the concept of self-funding either our insurance, which is almost impossible, but at least the dental portion of it, the dental and vision portion of it. So it's an area that Dan has had an interest in for a while, and then as we started to go through this budget process and things became tighter and tighter and more difficult decisions needed to be made, we wanted to put ourselves in a position to hopefully alleviate or mitigate some of those stressors that may be placed on the budget in future years. So working directly with Gina, Dan and Gina went through Delta Dental, who is our our dental insurance provider and vision insurance provider, to talk about the possibility of having a self-funded dental insurance program. This is a fairly common practice in many areas where in essence you kind of become the administrator of the plan, and that's ultimately what we are proposing. And Dan has put together a memo that I think outlines the conditions and the parameters very well, and what we hope to achieve through this process. And again, the ultimate goal is to potentially at least stabilize, if not stabilize, reduce not only the city's cost for dental insurance administration, but also maybe even eventually the employees' contribution for insurance premiums as we move out into the future and we start to realize, get good data on claims and things of that nature. So I guess I'll pass it over to Dan so he can talk about the specific details about it, and certainly Gina as well can jump in at any time. But that's kind of what the proposal is tonight. And the reason we're doing this kind of first is because, one, Gina's here and we don't want to keep her into the wee hours of the morning. She will be coming back later for team building though. But it is part of the budget process, and we'll talk about that as we go through the next item on the agenda, item number 6. This is reflected in our latest budget proposal.
So like Al said, we were trying to, my first hope by looking at this was to maybe try to find some cost savings for this year. But since we have no reserves, no history on what our claim history is, I realized that wasn't going to happen. So I said, well, I know every year the budget gets tougher and tougher, so if we can't save money this year or next year, could some decisions that we make today for 2019, could that help us sometime in the early 2020s? And so that's kind of where we fell. And talking with Gina and looking at global historical information on utilization of dental plans, we kind of concluded that that while we might pay $38,000 in premium, the probability of paying out $35,000 to $38,000 probably is not going to happen on an annual basis. So if what we're paying now, if we continue to pay that, we build up a reserve and hopefully experience claims that are less than what we're kind of paying ourselves, we can keep that residual. And then once we get a healthy reserve, we can then lower the premiums that the taxpayers pay, and where the savings would come in for employees is, for instance, right now for next year, the family plan is $135 a month. Employees pick up 10% of that for $1,350. You know, maybe 3-4 years down the road, we can lower that to $100. So then the city's only paying $90 per month instead of $120, and then employees are, you know, saving $3-4 a month. So that's where the future savings would come in. And Gina can maybe help explain some of the industry averages and that kind of thing.
Well,
Do you want to come up to the microphone?
Yeah, just because this is being recorded. Yeah. Or you can sit by Dan. Yeah.
so,
Either place, you're on camera.
okay,
This will be on YouTube.
okay. And Facebook too?
Yeah.
So with self-funded dental, you probably, there are employees here, people who work for employers that have self-funded medical or dental. It's pretty standard in the industry. Our group is a little small to look at self-funding for the medical, but dental is very predictable. There's only so many procedures you can do in the mouth, whereas in medical, you know, they're coming up with new things all the time. So this one is very good to self-fund because it is predictable and it's capped at $1,200 per plan year. So we actually talked to Delta today. We're getting some more information from them, but they gave us some information about the utilization of our group, and we hope to get more in the next day or two. But we have 30 some people that haven't even used their dental this year, for example. So we know that we're paying insurance for them, but.
That's Howie, one of those people.
Was it Howie?
Yeah.
Was it?
You're sitting close to him, so.
They didn't give us names.
Yeah.
They didn't give us
They
names.
just-
No. But, I mean, that's just it. So we're paying insurance premium for people that aren't using it. We might as well keep those savings ourselves. And then we know that there are people that even in our analysis and our numbers that we put out, we calculated, we were very conservative, we counted every child that was, you know, under the age of 18 but over the age of 11 that used orthodontia. So we now can get that information and know who has used their lifetime maximum. So I think our numbers are pretty conservative here. It's a way to save dollars for the city and the employees.
And there's definitely some risk when you look at that, you know, second page of the document. I doubt all of us would all hit our max. Every single spouse, dependent, and employee would hit their max in a given year. I doubt that's even ever happened anywhere for a group of our size. But, you know, there's the potential for significant cost overrun, so to speak, above and beyond what we pay in premiums. But we've seen pretty steady rates from Delta Dental over the last decade. And if we weren't a profitable group, they would have increased our rates to something much higher because they're in the business of making money. And so the lack of significant increases tells us that more than likely the claims each year are less than what we pay in premium.
Yes. They'll hate to see us go self-funded.
So what are they offering?
Well, we did. Yeah, they'll do the administration for us, but yeah, they haven't come back to say, hey, we'll keep you. And at this point, it would be hard to do that, knowing that we're leaving money on the table. We don't want to do that.
And the administration, the rate they quoted us was right around $250 a month, so $3,000 a year to make claims on all the employees' behalfs and the like, so.
And this change will be transparent to all the employees.
Right.
The plan is identical to what we have currently under a fully insured. It's, just signing the contract and.
Yeah, the benefits don't change to
Nothing changes.
the individual employees or their dependent family members, nor do the premiums change. It would be fairly seamless in that regard. It's the change really happens on the back end and on the accounting end.
In the future, if you have a reserve, as I look at this, it's potentially that we could increase, potentially down the road, increase benefits and or reduce premiums, correct?
That's the hope. Yes, that's absolutely the goal.
So is that how it works then? The money from year to year remains in that program, or does it return to the general fund? You talked about saving taxpayers' money.
Yeah, what we would do is, we would charge every department the same way we do now, for the premiums, like I kind of gave the example of a family plan being $135. And then we'll move those dollars into a separate special revenue fund, and then we'll make all claims out of that fund. So then any dollars that are left become the reserve for dental, and then the way the savings would occur down the road would be, I personally think that the reserve should probably be $40,000 to $50,000. So once we hit that target, we could then look and say, okay, our claims experience shows that we spend X, and our rates are bringing in Y. We don't need to build the reserves up much more at this point. So what do we need to do to just spend what we anticipate expenses to be? And then the savings would occur when we lower the premium. Or if we choose, as Larry had stated, to increase the benefit, we could probably keep the rates flat and increase the benefit. That's the other option. And it'd be something that we would probably explore 2 to 4 years down the road, depending on what those reserves end up being.
And you said you had to start with reserves first, so obviously if you're gonna do that,
No, we wouldn't have to.
then what would happen then if just say year one didn't quite work out?
Then we would have to take, like if we bring in $35,000 in premiums and we have $45,000 in claims, then the difference would have to come from contingency, fund balance, something like that.
Need interfund transfer.
I was just wondering, have the city employees seen this and what are their thoughts?
They have not, because it doesn't really affect them in terms of the benefit. Typically, when we meet with employee groups to talk about insurance things, they don't care necessarily how it's funded. They just want to know that the benefit is or is not changing,
And the cost is not
and their cost. We've shared the new costs with them, and the impact is, if you're a single plus or single plus children, the rate actually goes down, and on the family side, the premium goes up like $3 from the employee standpoint.
Right.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to direct staff to pursue self-insuring the dental benefits?
So moved. Second.
Any further questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, here we go, rolling with the budget.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you. Update, discussion, direction, and possible action regarding the 2019 preliminary budget. And
So-
you all have a copy to follow along. I'm
Yep.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so this afternoon, I think it was this afternoon, or maybe this morning, I sent out a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that I'll be using tonight, as well as a memo that really kind of just gives a narrative of what I'm going to say, just in case I miss anything, or if somebody just picks it up later and wants to know what I said, it should be part of the memo. So I'm going to start the PowerPoint presentation with a little bit kind of background. I know we've all heard this. We heard this on October 2nd, and we heard it on October 16th, but I think it's, always good to kind of revisit what exactly makes up our budget and where, how does changes in the economy, changes in our city's growth affect our budget? Obviously, things change every year, cost of things change, how are cities intended to keep up with that? And as I talk about in these 3 bullet points here, these are really kind of the 3 items that dramatically affect, cap, constrain, however you want to paraphrase it, our budget. And the first item is city's growth, and that is directly associated with levy limits. Levy limits are established on a city as a cap, and how many dollars the city can collect through taxes. So when we send out our tax bills, we have to cap how much we can collect based on levy limits. And the state statutes allow you to increase levy limits every year based on net new construction. And what we saw was a 2% increase, or 2.055% increase in the city's net new construction, which allowed us to increase our levy by $48,885. So that's how much we can increase, that's how many more tax dollars we can collect this year than we did last year. The part that we kind of focus on is we saw over $18.7 million worth of new value created in 2018. That's if somebody was to do the math, you'd say, well, that's more than 2%. But net new construction is new value created as opposed to just the overall increase in value. So we saw $18.7 million worth of new value created in 2018. However, we're still only able to increase our levy limit by $48,885. The second item that kind of constricts our budget or sets the guidelines for our budget is expenditure restraint. And in order to qualify for expenditure restraint, again, the state sets a cap on how much you can increase your expenses. Those 2 things are separate. They are not mutually exclusive, or they are mutually exclusive, I should say. So levy limits caps how much you can collect. Expenditure restraints caps how much you can spend. And they are almost never equal. So our levy limits, we were able to increase our levy by 2%, but our expenditure restraint allows us to increase our expenses by 3.5%. That number is much higher than what we talked about on October 16th. At that point, we were conservatively projecting 2.8%, but the number came back at 3.6%. It says 3.5 because we cannot exceed 3.6, so we say 3.5. So that was a piece of good news that we got. But it's a constraint on our budget. And even if you are allowed to increase your expenditures a certain amount, you are still capped by levy limits. One does not trump the other. So whatever one is lesser of those 2 is really what sets the budget. And then lastly is what we talk about often is the affordability piece, developing a budget that maintains service as affordable as possible, and that's the can and should, of can versus should that we talk about. There's a lot of things we could do. We could borrow. We could go to referendum. We could do a lot of things, but then it comes down to should we do those things. So that's kind of the background again. Probably give that in every budget presentation for the rest of my life, but because it's important. It's really what sets the budget together. So then reviewing, on October 16th, we came before you and gave a budget presentation, and that budget was presented at that time, was preliminary. It's still preliminary today, but at that time we were $46,000 over budget. And what that means is we had to cut $46,000 from the budget that was presented at that time in order to qualify for both levy limits and expenditure restraint. So we didn't have any answers at that point. We didn't have any magic wand to fix that, but we knew that we were in trouble. The budget did not qualify for expenditure restraint and did not qualify for levy limits, so at that point, in essence, it wasn't even a legal budget. Employee health insurance contributions in that budget increased from 14.14% to 20%, which was a dramatic increase. It may only sound like 6%, but from a nominal dollar standpoint, in some cases for like a family plan, it was a 53% increase in the monthly premium. We knew that cuts needed to be made, and we were seriously considering borrowing in order to balance the budget or find a way to close that gap. And that would be the first time we have borrowed for a budgetary purpose since I came here in 2014. So that was some serious considerations that we were taking back on October 16th. Since then, we've done a couple of different things. We had an all-employee meeting on October 17th, and at that meeting, the mayor and Alderperson Roosh were present. We presented kind of the budget to the employees, presented everything that was involved, and kind of laid it out on the table for them as to the concerns that we had, including the changes to their health insurance contributions, which was, had a dramatic impact on a lot of folks' take-home pay. Obviously, employees were concerned. They expressed.
Yeah,
but-
so were we.
Yeah.
And so was the council very concerned about this.
Right.
And the message that we delivered to employees was, we are all concerned, and, we're hopeful that, we can work really hard and figure something out. But at that time, it didn't look all that positive.
No. I'm not being hyperbolic in saying that we didn't have any answers. We really didn't. Borrowing was really the what we had talked about. The morning of October 17th, Dan and I started to develop a plan to borrow. We met with the employees, had that conversation, and as we said, obviously there was some concern, talk about, what does this mean for us in the future? If we can't balance the budget this year, what is next year going to look like? How does this affect us? We were concerned from an organizational standpoint, from an administration standpoint, in terms of retention and recruitment. If we can't remain competitive in the public sector, we certainly will never be competitive in the private sector, and we've seen that time and time again. So that was a concern of ours. So, Dan and I, with the help of Howie and Scott, kind of went through the budget one more time. And we called it kind of scrubbing the budget. And we were able to come up with about $12,000 worth of cuts. And that was I don't even remember how many cuts that in total, I don't know, 24 cuts, $500 here, $1,000 here, $2,000 here, $600 here. And we were able to reduce it by $12,000. And those were basically operational cuts. Cemetery equipment, tuition reimbursement, equipment, maintenance on the tasers, things like that. Right. So we were, at that point, this may sound silly, but at that point we were looking at, okay, how many pencils do we need to buy, kind of stuff. That's really where we were at. None of those cuts were over $4,000, so it was a series of small cuts in order to get anything that we could, any assistance that we could, get that $46,000 number down. Then Howie came to me with an idea, and it's an idea that we hadn't discussed, an idea that we hadn't considered before. But based on a number of kind of decisions that we had made throughout the year, this started to become, as Howie kind of explained it to me, it did seem to make more sense. And the concept is we've had a vacant position in our utility department for several months. And we have been recruiting for that position and recruiting for that position and recruiting for that position. We've gone through basically 2 entire recruitments, up to and including interviews and even at one point having negotiations with a candidate, and ultimately we could not fill the position. In terms of the candidate that we had preferred, our pay range was too low. Again, came down to being competitive, and we couldn't be at that point. So Howie's talking with me and talking with his department and his staff. There was an individual already under the City of Milton's employ who had expressed an interest in this position, was not and is still not currently qualified for the minimum qualifications, but we talked about, would it be possible to move this person into that vacant utility position and allow that person to get trained up over an 18-month period, and have that person ready to go in the utility department, working in the utility department, today. They're not yet, because we haven't approved the budget yet, but get them on board and start the training process to allow them to work in that position. And then the position that they would be vacating would be eliminated. So they'd be moving from a general laborer position, where they work in the streets and in the parks and all over, and kind of just a jack of all trades in the public works department, and move them to the utility department, where they'd have much more specialized tasks, where they would really work in the water and the wastewater departments and have very specific tasks, and they would require specific certifications, and they would need to go to training and become certified in specific processes that they would need. And then we would eliminate that position that they vacated. So as we talked about it, and I kept going back to Howie and saying, are you sure this is gonna work? Does this really make sense? And as we talked about it, it became more and more clear that we could make this happen. So the decision was made that, okay, let's put that in the budget and see what it looks like. Let's see if this actually ripples through the budget in a way that could work. And ultimately it did. And it resulted in a reduction in the general fund budget by $47,500. So that, in essence, to a certain degree, fixed our budget. So, in short, how we fixed our budget. That's
And we
really
did
it.
not. And we did not cut significant amounts out of capital,
Right.
which was my idea. That was extremely unpopular, not popular with anybody at all. I was the lone person saying that, so.
So that, and I say that somewhat jokingly, but very seriously also, that, Howie and his department's understanding of the budget situation, understanding of the constraints that we're into, again, as they have done many, many times, kind of looked within themselves and said, okay, what can we do to help this situation? And the processes that we do in order to create efficiencies, and Howie took it to his entire department and said, does this make sense? So talk to, the folks that are out there in the wastewater treatment plant, as well as the folks that are out there mowing the parks, and says, does this make sense? And everybody kind of agreed, yes, I think this makes sense. In their eyes, the pros outweighed the cons, and the pros were, hey, this creates a balanced budget. We're not going to have to look at service cuts. We're not going to have to look at layoffs, and we're able to at least hold the line on our pay and benefits for at least another year, hopefully for a couple of years. So, in my opinion, there's a debt of gratitude to the Public Works Department for looking within themselves and doing that, because it really affects all of our departments, and it's very admirable that they would do that. And we'll talk about that. We'll continue to talk about that because it's going to be a big piece of the budget. That it doesn't come without a price, and that's where we kind of need to remain focused on. The last piece of the equation, that what has changed since October 16th, is our ERP number came back at 3.6%, which again, we were conservatively projecting 2.8%. We honestly never thought it would be 3.6. We thought maybe 3.1, but 3.6 was nice. But again, it didn't really matter. We can raise our budget, we can raise our expenditures $32,000, but we were bumping up against levy limits. So it wasn't the cure-all. Just that one piece wasn't a cure-all. Each one of these things held independently could not have fixed the budget other than Howie's willingness to reorganize it within his department. So today, the budget as it stands, as we have presented within your packet, is now balanced. It now qualifies for expenditure restraint and levy limits. It allows the health insurance premiums to stay flat, health insurance contributions to stay flat at 14%, as opposed to going up to 20% as we previously talked about. It allows us to have a matching COLA for the police union, rep and non-rep, or union and non-union employees will see the same COLA increase as opposed to having two different COLA increases. Our capital projections or capital allocations remain the same in this budget. Nonprofit funding for the Gathering Place and Milton Historical Society remain fully funded in this budget to their request of $10,000 each. And this allows us to start creating the reserve for the self-funded, self-insured dental fund to the tune of $22,000. And lastly, it doesn't require us to borrow for another year.
And the best part is the next slide.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's always good news. So that's where the budget's at today. Those are the things that we were able to accomplish, again, through the work of our departments, making sacrifices, the library, reducing their hours of their overall hours of their employees there, and making sacrifices with the changes that happened with Lisa retiring, the sacrifices that Scott has made within his budget and operational cuts, and certainly the sacrifices that Howie has made within his department. And then I think Inga and I and Leanne and Carrie and Rebecca all made sacrifices, and Dan just, he's arm candy. No, I mean, it honestly really was a team effort to get to this point. And we're certainly not done, and we have not crossed the finish line, but this is kind of where we sit today. The good news is what I can say today, is there are no more numbers that we need to wait for from the state that can alter this portion of the budget. And by that, I mean the levy. There are certainly pieces within the budget that can change however the council sees fit. If there are aspects of what we have presented on this slide, or what we presented on October 16th or October 2nd, or even things that you think about next week when we have the public hearing, and then even the week after that, with adoption potentially scheduled for the 20th, if there are any aspects of the budget that you aren't comfortable with, or you don't like, or don't think are necessary, those things can all still change. But at least at this point, everything is within our control, as opposed to waiting for some outside entity to either bestow us good news or take away from us again. So that's the good news. But again, nothing is set in stone. I don't want anybody to feel like oh, okay, we're done. When do we move to adopt? There's still plenty of time to make changes. We still have the public hearing. We still hear from residents on a semi-regular basis about questions that they have or concerns that they have with the budget, and we fully expect that to continue up to and including the day that it is adopted. So that's a key aspect I want folks to remember, to not feel like this is done. But at least it's within our control. So any questions about any of these items, and then we can talk about tax rate and levy and general fund expenditure increases and things like that. Any questions about what's been presented so far? It's a lot.
I do. I thank you for being able to reduce this as you have, but I'm just kind of a little concerned that we are reducing general labor from Public Works. You guys are awful busy. I mean, is this gonna work all year long if we get like 3 snowstorms and if we have 5 more celebrations in the spring?
We're not having 5 more celebrations. No, it won't work, and don't ask for any more.
Even with the person though that goes to utilities, there's like a 15% of their still goes from the general fund. And that's for the snowstorms and the overtime and just the different things that happen. Because even though they're all separate departments, everybody, in all the departments still work at some time in somebody else's department, but that's still like a 15% that covers that. Right. And then there's some other things that we switched around that like the utility person is more responsible for some of their maintenance things that the general fund used to do, but that's already budgeted in utility budgets. So there's some maintenance things that can switched around, and just, so you won't really notice a lot of, you just won't notice a lot of the changes. And then we've got some different equipment that's helped too, so that's gonna help us with maintenance on cutting down some of the hours and stuff. So there's some changes, like Al said, over the whole last couple of years that, kind of makes it a little more easier and possible to do, so.
Yeah, it's certainly a concern that I had right out of the gates, and I know Howie did. I know Howie did not come to this decision easily, or this suggestion easily. It's definitely concerns to the point where when he initially presented it to me, I thought, oh, thank God we figured this out. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, boy, man, I don't know if it's worth sacrificing this to get us through 1 year. But as we continue to talk about it, and as he said, 15% remains in the general fund, shifting of duties between the utility and the general fund will help. And then there has been a number of efficiencies through capital purchases that we've made over the year in improving our equipment and getting better equipment and more efficient equipment that have allowed us to really see some better efficiencies out there in the field. But yes, it will continue to put a strain on the department, especially as we move forward and grow. And that still remains a concern to myself and to the mayor and to Howie certainly, and to the guys out in Public Works. But this was something that we looked at from a number of different angles, kind of twisted it around, looked underneath to see if it really makes sense. And for now, we certainly believe it does, and we certainly believe that it will carry us through 2019. In terms of snow plowing specifically, it's important to remember, whether we make this decision or not, there will be 12 people in Public Works. So if we decide to go this direction, there'll be 12 people in Public Works. If we decide to not go this direction, there'll be 12 people in Public Works. There'll be 12 human beings, 12 bodies working out there. So this does not eliminate a human being, it eliminates an FTE within the budget that was already vacant. Do I have the number wrong? Is it not 12? Seems like something you'd catch me on. Okay.
I was just gonna say, we also, Al and I kind of compared it to a couple of years ago when Elena left, and we didn't really fill that position, and Leanne kind of took over the clerk's position, and we still had the part-time position, which Rebecca fills now. But there were decisions made over the years to automate certain processes, like encouraging people to pay online, so it's less envelopes that we process, and phone trees and some of that other stuff that helped.
Tax bills, yes.
Yeah, the
yes.
the
That was
outsourcing of
huge.
tax bills.
Yeah.
So, while at the time didn't necessarily save any money, once we experienced some attrition, we were able to look at everything from a global perspective and say, okay, how do we shift things around to maybe actually realize some savings from those conscious decisions that took place over a number of years. And that's,
Yeah, remember that we've had meetings and discussions, and this has been a very thoughtful process, and if the employees at Public Works did not support it, we wouldn't be here with it. So it wasn't something that anybody took lightly, and Howie really put a lot of thought into it. And I really appreciate all the time that he spent doing this, and all the staff, and all the meetings we've had, and all the sleepless nights I've had.
and I know even like during this budget process, talking with Ashley, trying to figure out how do we fill the vacancy that was created when Lisa retired, and we talked about it. We said had the library staff stayed status quo, the increase that you see in the library budget this year would have been significantly larger than what is actually in the final budget, because the staffing situation was different. So the library board and Ashley and the staff there looked at ways to try to mitigate the impact because of attrition too, so.
The other piece I would like to throw out, and I'm sure you're thinking about it, but as we move forward and in future years, believing in education, we can certainly think about bringing on some interns during the summer and give them some experience working on equipment and.
And we do have that. We do have summer staff already.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could.
I would like to thank Al and Dan, Anissa, and Howie and Scott for all your work in being creative and the hours that you have put in trying to deal with some difficult situations. That's taken a lot of time and stress and a lot of thought-provoking discussions, so thank you.
Thank God for dreams. Some of these come up in dreams.
Only a few screaming matches, no.
So, with that being said, and I certainly, I will say, you know, at least from my perspective, I appreciate those comments. I do, because sometimes you feel like it just going through the motions, you know, and just trying to think about, okay, what will they say on Facebook about this? You know, and you really get bogged down in that.
Or I plan to stop in for 15 minutes and it's a 2-hour budget
Yeah.
meeting. And now I'm just like, and if Dan and Al say, we have a question for you, I'm go into panic mode. What? Thank you.
So that's kind of what it means for us internally. So now what does it mean for the rest of the world? What does it mean for the outside world in the citizens of Milton? And the next couple of slides talk about that. General fund expenditures with this budget increase 2.65%, which is a pretty small increase when you look at what has been done in years past and what expenditure restraint shows. What I think is more compelling is that our levy actually only increases 1.64%. Again, so we're only collecting 1.64% more in taxes than we were last year. But by far and away the most compelling number to me is that the city's tax rate drops by 58 cents with this budget. And I wish the Courier and the Gazette was here.
Guys all need to post this on
Yeah.
Facebook.
And I mean, and this is what always happens. But believe me, I'll make sure that they get this information. The tax rate drops from $10.10 to $9.52. That's the lowest tax rate the city of Milton has seen since 2014. That's a 5.76% decrease in the tax rate, in the city's portion of the tax rate. So this, when you pay your property tax bills, there are 4 components that make it up: city, county, VOTEC, and school district. And our portion of it will decrease by 5.76%. The 5 years, the 5 budgets that I've been here, it's never decreased, let alone to an amount to that extreme, and will be lower than what it was in 2015. I think that's a pretty cool thing to finally be able to say, that we're there. Again, if this budget is adopted.
And the debt service finally decreased.
Yeah.
We are actually on the downhill. Last year we had 857,000. This year it falls to 850,000.
So, again, I'll make sure to repeat this all tomorrow to the Gazette and to the Courier. And then again on Friday, and then probably on Monday too, just to make sure they get it. Because I don't think the average person will get that news unless it's right there for them. So what does this mean? In terms of service provisions, this budget still does eliminate the splash pad concession stand, simply because that continues to operate at such a massive loss, $3,700 this year alone. The usage of it continues to dwindle, although the splash pad itself, the usage continues to remain very high. And it's a very active public amenity, free public amenity. The concession stand, for whatever reason, either just gets lost in the abyss, or people are bringing their own items to the splash pad, which they certainly can. But the staffing of it and the buying of the goods and things like that continues to lose. We lose just so much money on it.
Didn't you say you sold like $200 worth of stuff or something?
Yeah, what was?
Oh, there's equipment in there though, right?
There is equipment
Okay,
in there.
so one of the suggestions I have is that
Yes.
if a nonprofit in the community, like the youth group, the Milton Area Youth Center, would want to
Yes.
run that concession stand.
That was, right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, Larry and I talked about that, and we have started those conversations with treating it, what I think around here, what we're used to is Scoopy nights at Culver's. So if somebody wants to rent out the splash pad concession, we'll give them the keys. There's, the stuff's in there, and whatever they sell, it's theirs. If they want to sell, blow pops or push-ups or, Diet Mountain Dew, we could make that happen.
And it would help nonprofits in our community.
Right. Right.
Without increasing taxes.
So then, does this mean that, are we going to look at the request from the YMCA?
You certainly can. Again, everything's still open for discussion. It is not in this budget,
Okay.
but it's, if that's something
Right.
you would like to entertain, we can put it in, and it would just jiggle those numbers around by
Okay.
whatever commensurate amount.
Because but at our last meeting, they had given us, they gave us the request for $1,000.
Correct.
And they just didn't give us a presentation, so,
Well, they did. They had their
well, yeah, that's right,
the
they,
Elton John one.
oh, right,
And the reason that it wasn't, originally is because they didn't meet our deadline.
right.
That's
So,
Yeah.
there's
And-
consequences.
Yes, that, and the feedback that I have gotten from individuals is that there wasn't an appetite to put them in the budget this year. That can change. At this point, it's all on the table still, but I just wanted, that's a good question, and it is clear, I want to make that clear that yes, Milton House and Gathering Place are in there to their full request, but the YMCA is not. In terms of service provision, this is the reduction of one FTE from the Public Works Department, which certainly could impact future service provisions. As again, as we grow, we're in discussions of another residential subdivision. That's more streets to plow, more leaves to pick up, more terrace to maintain. Those things all come at a cost. There is always a tipping point for all growth. And that's something that we will continue to monitor closely, and certainly have faith in Howie and Scott and Ashley and everybody else about, hey, if they need something more, we need to know about that. So that's something that we'll continue to monitor. Capital funding remains in this at $250,000, which is great, but unfortunately it is still far less than what we would love to have. Even to simply effectuate or implement our 10-year pavement improvement program. So you can see there's a parenthetical annotation there. Just to do 2019 alone, we would need $429,500. So even at $250,000 of capital, of that, $125,000 of it is road improvements. The rest of it is equipment. We're nowhere near meeting the amount that we would need to maintain our infrastructure at the way that we believe is appropriate. So that's an important note. I don't want that to kind of be lost. We certainly are appreciative of the $250,000. I hope the citizens are as well, but that's something that will probably for a very, very long time remain underfunded. And that's not unique to Milton, believe me. Employee relations, this budget holds the line on employee insurance contribution. This budget also still provides a COLA increase for all employees, an equitable COLA increase for all employees. And then as we've talked about in future budgets, this will continue to be a challenge for us in all future budgets to provide a similar COLA as well as hold the line on insurance contributions. And we've discussed that with the employees as we've met with them, that this year we've been able to hold the line at 14% with a 3% COLA increase. Next year, we just don't know. Maybe that COLA increase is 2%, maybe it's 1%, maybe employee contributions for health insurance premiums go up to 16%. We need to balance that with the needs of the budget versus our ability to keep and retain employees, as well as to recruit future employees, because none of us are getting younger, even me, every day. And again, we were very close to requiring borrowing this year. It certainly doesn't mean that we are off the hook for next year. And again, when I'm talking next year, I'm talking about the creation of the 2020 budget. We don't, with the way this budget is, there should be no borrowing in 2019 unless something comes up, but not as part of the budget for operational or capital needs. But it's certainly looking at future budgets, the 2020 budget, that may be something that we may need to revisit in 2020. 2 more slides, and then and these ones are short ones. Again, we always talk about what are our goals: balanced budget, stay within levy limits, qualify for expenditure restraint, no reductions in service, and no new borrowing. And for the most part, again, we are able to check all those boxes, but I still don't feel necessarily comfortable checking the box on the no reductions in service, based on the fact that the closing of the splash pad concession stand, and then with the understanding that there's an asterisk that we are reducing an FTE in the Public Works Department. So maybe I'm being picky on that, but in terms of
Put a vending machine over there then.
we'd actually have looked at that as well. Yeah.
Go back into the parks budget.
Yeah. So that's so we feel fairly good about being able to check those boxes. Again, remember on October 16th, only 2 of those boxes were checked, and that number 5 box was a very tenuous data. Again, these are just kind of repeats here. Sorry, but this budget represents a continuation of most services from the previous year. We have updated the debt service number. This budget has no new tax levy supported borrowing component. Currently, 25.84% of every tax dollar collected goes to debt service. So that number has gone down. So we're trending in the right direction. And lastly, this budget reduces the city tax rate by at least 5.76%, or $58 for every $100,000. And when I say at least, Dan kind of went into more detail about that in the memo. There is still a challenge to an assessment for one of our manufacturing properties that if is successful, it likely will keep the tax rate at $9.52. If they are unsuccessful in their challenge of the assessment, our tax rate will likely fall even below $9.52. Might be $9.47, might be $9.51, but it very likely will not be higher than $9.52. It's much more likely to be less than that, but we wanted to, again, present a number that is more likely to go down than up. Lessons learned from other entities. Lastly, here's our budget schedule. Again, we had the budget publication approval on October 16th. The budget was published on October 25th. We're having our meeting today on October 7th. Public hearing is next week, which is an off week for us. It'll be on Tuesday at 6 o'clock as advertised in the Milton Courier. So next week, Tuesday at 6 o'clock is our budget public hearing. And then we talked about approval being on the 20th or the 27th. Part of that was based on where are the numbers at? Well, I can say at this point, again, as we talked about before, the numbers are the numbers now from the state. Nothing will change from an external source. Any changes that happen will come internally. So if the council is comfortable adopting the budget on the 20th, we are comfortable adopting the budget on the 20th. But if you'd rather wait till the 27th, we're still open for that too. So. You don't?
No. But comments.
Yeah, okay.
Dan, would you be able to roughly project from now till 2027? How? No. I think this is no. I mean the reduction in the debt per year. If we kept on the current payment schedule and the current.
Yeah, there's a chart.
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't drop precipitously until about 2024. And then 2025, 2026, and then 2027, it all goes away except this building and the Public Works building.
Right. But what I'm thinking is, my head is projecting out, and that may be at least partially deal with some of our fears of being short. Maybe not in the next couple of years, but at least in the next 5 years out, picking up some of those. You know what I mean? We'll be able to do a little more in the capital. Is what I'm getting at. So.
Yeah.
And then there's always the other issue with, if and when we get a fire district and what that could mean too in terms of operations and capital needs and things of that nature too. So
It would just be helpful for me as a leader in the city to kind of see.
I can send you guys something
what
that shows what the
potential thing
what the levy supported debt
Yeah.
looks like over the next decade.
Yeah, just as a general.
That would assume no new borrowing though.
Exactly.
Yeah, no new levy supported.
It's an important distinction. No new levy supported borrowing. So when we put up that $25.08, and I'm not trying to be like slick with my words here, but that's an important distinction. If we do a revenue borrowing or a utility borrowing, those don't count towards the levy supported debt. Those have a funding source that is dedicated to them. So it does not affect the tax rate, it does not affect levy limits, so that's why there is an important distinction. So, and I say that because, we've talked in great length about the lift station that's going to be required, $1.5, $1.7 million. That will likely require some borrowing, but that will not be levy supported debt.
It's supported within the district.
Right.
Thank you, that makes sense, I appreciate it.
Any other comments on the budget or questions?
I was just wondering if we could just go ahead and decide on like the 20th for the last.
It would be helpful for us from staff perspective if you could, but you don't have to.
I also think the 20th would be a good time to do that.
I agree. Yeah.
She
Keeps.
said she's gone on the 27th.
Oh, yeah. You bringing us turkey?
On the 20th.
Oh.
That's good for me too.
It's 2 days before
We want
Thanksgiving.
venison then, if you're gonna be back.
What we would have on the agenda that evening then is the resolution to adopt the 2019 budget would be on the November 20th agenda. And at this point, it might literally be the only thing on the agenda, but we say that all the time and it never happens.
What time do you guys want to have that?
6.
6th on the 20th.
Works.
Is there a motion? Do we need to make a motion? No. Do you wanna chime in?
You can, since you're gonna do it as a different time than normal, if you wanna do that by resolution instead of at that time on that date, that's fine. Motion, yes.
I make a
Well,
motion that we,
Motion is generally a resolution, technically.
Therefore be it resolved.
as I make a motion that we have our budget approval meeting on November 20th at 6 PM.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. All right, anything else? Any comments or anything before I talk about the budget?
The only other thing I'd point out, in the little memo that I have for the items that would affect the tax rate, there's a few assumptions. If you look at the handout that is tax rate and levy comparison, I've kind of got some estimates for Rock County's tax rate and then the school credit.
What is it?
Because apparently the county has not shared that information with Jeremy yet.
I just took last year's amount and added 10%, so I was very conservative, so I'm sure it's gonna be lower. But like I allude to in the memo, we're still, if people are interested in what the ultimate tax rate is on people's tax bills, we're waiting on the levy from Rock County. We're waiting on the school credit from the DOR, and then we're waiting on the final assessment ratio from the Department of Revenue. So those could affect things, and like we alluded to during the presentation, most likely, if anything, the rate shown will be lower than what we have in the packet, but
So since the courier just arrived, we're gonna do the whole presentation again.
That's what I was gonna ask for. I think
Headline
that'll-
of the article, Milton's tax rate decreases by 5.76%.
decreases.
Lowest tax rate the citizens of Milton have seen since pre-2015. All right.
Press release forthcoming.
When's the deadline?
What's my ghost name?
Whoever you want it to be.
Yeah. Casper.
So I just wanted to point that out.
The-
So, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and the last thing that I will say about the budget, in those, yeah, Dan is right, that piece is still kind of, to me, remains to be seen, but it, again, does not affect the levy, doesn't affect any of the decisions we need to make here. But I think I would be remiss in saying, we've talked about, the hard work that Dan and Howie and Scott and Ashley and Inga and everybody else internally that has done on this budget. But the mayor has been more involved in this budget than any of the 5 budgets that I've been here. Not that you weren't involved, but you're not the only mayor I've worked with either. And her input and involvement in this budget has been critically important to creating what we have seen here today. In terms of the fact that this is one of the toughest budgets that Dan and I put together, and there are a lot of decisions that went into this budget that we were uncomfortable with. Things that we didn't necessarily agree with or like. Oftentimes we were on competing ends of those decisions. Dan liked it, I hated it, or vice versa. And the mayor's involvement in it allowed us to continue to move this budget forward and provide a perspective from the outside that oftentimes broke ties or just said, no, this is the way it's going to be. And we needed that from time to time in order to continue to move forward. And having her come to the all-employee meetings and having Teresa come to the all-employee meetings, and then having Anissa come with us yesterday as we visited the library and the police department and public works, I think that was very important to the employees to see too, that there's there's buy-in from the council that these aren't just hollow words, or that it's not just Al and Dan sitting in a dark office someday, coming up with hatching up these schemes, that there's truly a team effort, and it's more than just us internally. The folks who are elected, getting involved is absolutely critical, because I have said many, many times, at the end of the day, I don't get a vote, Dan doesn't get a vote, Ashley doesn't get a vote, Rebecca doesn't get a vote. It's up to you guys. So having your involvement in it and having the mayor's critical involvement, we couldn't have gotten to this point without that involvement. So very appreciative of the council, but very, very much so of the mayor and her involvement in this process. It's been great.
And this time of the year, Al's office is actually dark because he doesn't believe in turning on the lights.
Every day, I save money.
We
Save dollars.
decrease the amount of hours that there will actually be lights on, and we will be using oil lamps to build this budget. That was my idea.
When I worked at when I worked at a previous job, one of the city managers I worked for used to come in, and every day he would ask people. He would just randomly stop in and say, "Well, what'd you do to save the city money today?" And if only he was my boss now, I'd say, "I never turn my lights on." I used to say to him, "Well, I didn't wash my hands after I left the bathroom." But I never turn my lights on in my office, never.
One of the things, if you remember, that we did and we're going to do again is the council established goals. So, go back and reflect on the goals that you talked about, because ultimately budgets are about values. And I think that we have a budget that reflects the values of the citizens and of the council. So always, like Al said, there's room for us to make adjustments, but we worked really, really, really hard on this budget and went back and forth and talked and rethought, and my head's going to explode before the end of the year if I have to think about any or budgets. But I appreciate how much the staff puts into this and is so thoughtful about it. And really, we have a great team at the City of Milton. And I appreciated all the, I went in one day with like 25 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And Al and Dan, sat down with me and, answered every one of my questions, and it, gave us some more conversation to talk about and things to think about. And all of you obviously have those same opportunities to go back and think about this budget, ask questions, send emails, if you have anything further. But one of the things I wanted to also share with you is that as a governmental body, there's always been some sort of discussion and debate about philosophy and what should government do and what shouldn't government do. And actually the preamble to the Constitution tells us what government should be doing. The government is to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And I think our budget does that. So we look forward to the public hearing. Everybody bring your squads with you who want to comment, have questions, make suggestions. As always, we want input from the public because this is their budget too. That's all I have.
That's all we have. In terms of the budget update, discussion, and possible action, I think we hit all three of those items. So,
Does anyone have any questions on attachments 1 through 5 at all? I know a lot of it was touched in the presentation and that kind of thing, but.
I will point out one thing too, that I know in terms of the attachments on the, we don't have page numbers on them. Man, see, we're still not that awesome.
But we're so close.
Under the Stormwater Fund, which is the City of Milton Total Enterprise Fund Capital List, there shows a
2A.
Rock County Clean Sweep allocation of $2,000. I wanted to kind of circle back to that conversation that we had a few months ago, in which we had that individual from the county come and speak to us about the importance of the Rock County Clean Sweep. So that is included in this budget. So I wanted to make sure that that was
The full
2,000. Yeah.
Take that to the county.
And we'll be bringing forth utility budgets later in December.
Why I think that
Say that again, Dan.
We'll be bringing forth the actual full-blown utility budgets in December. These are just some of the one-off capital lists, so we'll get the formal budgets for stormwater, sewer, water, and the TIF districts.
Okay. We're already to the consent agenda.
Yeah. Already.
Is there a motion to approve the
69
consent
minutes
agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Item number 8, discussion and action to approve new operator licenses.
There are 2 operator licenses as provided in the memo from our city clerk, Leanne Schrader, that she is recommending approval of. And again, those have passed the background check by the Milton Police Department and further reviewed by the municipal court clerk and the city clerk, and they are recommending approval.
Is there a motion?
So,
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding the request for an easement within the town of Milton along North Pine Road and North Newville Road.
So this is an easement that is in essence being requested by the DOT as part of their interstate improvement program. They will need to relocate a force main, sanitary sewer force main that the city has that extends all the way from the city of Milton out to the Rock River. Little do people know that that does exist. We'll need to relocate it as part of their overall reconstruction project for the I-90-39 corridor. So they have provided us with a preferred alignment, which is provided in this item. And then in the next item, it actually is the agreement that we would have with the DOT as well as the quitclaim deed, in which they will assure us that they will reimburse us for the costs associated with that work. So we can take those 2 items at a time. Item number 9 did go to the Plan Commission, and they unanimously forwarded to the council with a positive recommendation.
I have a question about that
Yes.
item. If we are hooking up with the state, but yet it's out in the township, what kind of requirements now will these town folks have?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but maybe I can provide more information and it'll answer the question. This force main sanitary sewer, this sanitary sewer force main already exists. It's just being relocated on a different alignment to better coordinate with the improvements they are making on I-90. So there will be no requirements of anybody who's in and around this this alignment. It's not a situation in which they'll be forced to hook up to it, if that's your concern. No. This is this is actually the discharge of our effluent from our wastewater treatment facility. So the water's moving the wrong way, so they wouldn't be hooking up to it. If they did, sorry for whoever's downstream. Yeah, so it's not that situation. I understand. Yeah, as I started answering it. Okay. Yeah.
Services, and so for future development also?
Yeah, no change. Nothing. Yeah.
Is there a motion?
With that, I'll make the motion that we approve.
The first motion would be to enter into the agreement to grant the sanitary sewer easement to the town of Milton, or from the town of Milton.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
And that item is on the town board's agenda on their November 20th agenda, or at least that's what it's tentatively scheduled for. I know there's still an outstanding question, but that we're working on getting them an answer for. But
Okay, item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding an easement quitclaim deed and audit agreement regarding the Force Main relocation project in the town of Milton.
So again, this is the actual item that then sets that easement through the quitclaim deed, of which we would establish the easement and then grant that to the state of Wisconsin. And then the audit agreement that the state has provided to us, the Wisconsin Department of Transportation has provided to us, which indicates that they will reimburse us for costs associated with that relocation.
Move for approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All those in
Okay,
favor?
just for the record, just so it's clear for the minutes, that's a motion to approve both the quitclaim deed and authorizing the mayor to sign same on behalf of the city and approving the audit agreement, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Did you must have missed that part, Mark.
I did.
He said it so quickly.
That's why I don't hear as well as I used to, so that's why I was asking.
Do you still want to second that? Any other clarifications for anybody that didn't hear it correctly? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding Resolution 2018-30 to increase the levy limit associated with the Milton Joint Fire Department.
So this is a resolution that we pass every year that is required by the state. I know we talk about it every year, but we can kind of go over it again. Because we are a joint fire department, there is a special carve-out in levy limit law that requires, or that allows entities that are part owners in a joint fire department to exceed their respective levy limits by CPI +2. But in order to do that, we have to adopt this resolution. We do, and the town does if they so choose to take advantage of this carve-out in the levy limit law. So we've done this every year that I've been here, and I'm sure did it long before I came too, but this is that resolution that allows us to do that we have to submit with the city's budget and levy limit worksheet when we approve the budget. And again, this is kind of what, for folks who've been on the fire commission, we've kind of seen a couple of emails go back and forth between Dan and the fire commission and Brian Meyer. This is what it's in reference to, is that number that came from the state that allowed us to increase our levy to that amount. We didn't know what that amount was going to be, and then we got that 2 weeks ago. So in essence, it allows us to increase it allows the fire department to increase its overall budget by $47,000 above levy limits, which is then, split in half. So $23,524 from the city, $23,524 from the town. So again, I think there might be some confusion in that, lost in translation, that there was a request to cut the fire department's budget. No, it's in fact it's actually increasing $47,000. So yeah, that's where this kind of comes into play.
Yeah, the request to cut the fire department budget, or just to come in line with what needed what the max that we could contribute along with the town could contribute in order to take advantage of this. Because if the fire department requested $1 more from each one of us, we would lose the right to even increase by $23,000. So.
And this is on the town's agenda on November 20th as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're not meeting until December.
Oh, on
The town board, yeah, because they have to adopt their own resolution. Yeah.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we need any clarification?
I take it the motion was to approve.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Discussion regarding the 2019 refuse recycling fee.
So
After
this
commercial break.
Yeah, right. So this is another item that we bring forward every year. It doesn't require any action, but it's more of kind of an FYI to everybody. And for us, it's just the good news just keeps on coming. Our trash rates are going down next year, so
4 cents a month?
yeah. So this is an FYI, but and the reason being is our recycling grant from the state increased. So
Exciting news. Another headline.
That's 48 cents on the year.
You guys got this, deadline's Monday.
So you take that, 48 cents per year plus the $58 per $100, I mean, man, could be fun.
Let the investing begin.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be a big turkey Teresa's gonna bring on the 20th. So again, just an FYI.
So, general items, committee reports. Committee report. I'm asking for committee reports. Anything? All right then. Go ahead, Linda.
Oh, yes.
She did it on purpose.
That the Gathering Place is doing a Veterans Day event on Monday, and we did have a guest speaker, Anissa, who's dropping out, but we have a backup.
Oh, is that happening?
Yes.
You told me, let me know that it's happening.
I am, right
This
now.
is your notification.
This is it.
I sent the email out to everybody but you.
I put that in my calendar.
Okay. It's a wonderful event to honor our veterans. It will be first event is over at the Veterans Park, and that's at 11 a.m. And then dinner following dinner to serve all of the veterans will begin at noon at the Gathering Place. And there are quite a number of veterans that have already registered for dinner, and they still have, I believe, until Friday to reserve a place. So I think by then, you know, it's something that's been going on for, I don't know how many
Since I've been mayor.
Okay, so
For
it's,
sure.
you know,
I've been
it's,
speaking at it every year.
yeah, it's nice. So, and there are some other things going on in the community for the veterans, so I think it's fun. Okay, that was it.
I have to do a little bit of bragging here because of the time that I have served the citizens of Milton. I am very proud to say that our mayor, Anissa Welch, is now on the League of Municipalities Board of Directors. And I feel like that is just so awesome because we have received throughout the years so much information with regard to things that we could do in the city of Milton and how we can work with the state that have been, it's been beneficial to us. And so I look forward to the upcoming things that the league is going to be doing also. And I'm very proud that we have a mayor that is going to be active with that. And then the other thing that I also wanted to let you know is that at the League of Municipalities conference, there was a contest and we won. So I'm just going to read this card to you.
The city of Milton, the whole
Yes.
city, we're winners. It just doesn't
Yes.
stop.
It really, we're winners. We are, totally. This is
So much winning.
Dear Team Milton, that's everybody. Congratulations. You won a complete set of the league handbooks at the annual conference selfie contest.
Because Ryan and Linda and I are so photogenic.
Guess it makes us more photogenic than the other entrance.
If you want to see the winnings, they're on table 4
Yes.
in the city hall side.
And
It's all sorts
Yes.
of reading material and
And-
some buttons.
and I
And
would
you'll
definitely.
read it by the end of the year, right, Dan?
What? Oh, yeah.
And I would
Everybody got a
recommend-
button. I put a button in everybody's.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
And the books are resource books for all elected officials, and it's about $500 worth of resources.
I recommend everybody trying to at least come in and sit down and thumb through them for a couple of hours. They're full of information.
I suppose we could have a display at the library and they could be checked out. Anything else?
Yeah, when Howie walked in, we got them all laying out on the table in there. When Howie walked in, he just stared at him, and that was his question: is there going to be a quiz?
Is that what team building's going to be about tonight? Did you all do your reading?
Attorney Schrader was even intrigued because there was a book, there was a handout from the Municipal Attorneys Conference. this
It's
year.
a binder. It's like this
It's the
thick.
biggest one.
It's as thick as the county budget.
I have several of those at my office.
Oh, okay. Did you win a selfie contest too?
Yes, by not participating, yeah.
You know, what might have helped us is our location.
I wonder whose idea that was. Anything else? Okay, so since I have a habit of skipping Al on staff reports. Is there anything else, general items? So we'll start with Al and we'll circle around.
I don't necessarily have a staff report that is directly germane to me, but a staff report in terms of, you know, I saw most of everybody in this room yesterday, at least at one point, because we had the general election in this room. And once again, incredible turnout from the citizens of Milton, 88%, which is something that every single person who's of voting age should be incredibly proud of. That is awesome. That is very, very cool. So first off, that's very awesome for the citizens of Milton. But second off, I mean, that is a lot of people to process in a short amount of time and in a relatively small space. So if it wasn't for the poll workers that we had, who have been poll workers for many of them been poll workers for a number of years, and they're thoughtful and they're courteous and they're diligent in the execution of their tasks, and Leanne puts them in positions where they can be successful, and Leanne is incredibly organized, and you know, Carrie and Inga and Brenda, you know, basically we're in here all day from our staff. Dan and I came in again to be arm candy for a couple of minutes, but you know, it was just, it's awesome to see democracy in action, but it also can be disastrous when things go poorly. And we just never have to worry about that here in Milton because we have awesome poll workers, and Leanne does a great job of organizing it and getting stuff in order well in advance of the election, and then triple checking and quadruple checking things. And it's a luxury, I would say, for the citizens of Milton to have such a well operation machine in here. I mean, parking kind of sucks and we couldn't control the weather, but you know, that's that. But very cool. I mean, you hear about the horror stories all over the country, even in our county, and we just never have those. And I'd say I'd knock on wood, but I'm that confident that we're in such a good position because of the poll workers and because of Leanne and the training that she's done, and you know, Inga's increasing her role in the election process and becoming more competent in that, and it's only going to continue to benefit us. So it's awesome.
And you didn't run out of ballots?
We
or-
did not run out of ballots. So they were available if we needed them. I said, well, if you think.
Did you order 100% or plan on 100% of participation then?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. And over 15% of Milton voted absentee. That's another important aspect of it. So you know, we have 88% turnout. Becca and Inga and Carrie and Brenda are helping people at the counters vote while taking phone calls, while taking videos, while doing this, while doing that. You know, it's
Hey, but we are 88%, and we keep increasing with every election, our voter turnout.
How late did everybody have to stay last night then?
9:45, all the election officials were dismissed.
when I came rolling in here this morning at like 7:30, this room was clean basically. So it's like crazy.
You didn't even know what election.
Public Works.
Yeah.
Thank you,
See?
Public Works.
Public Works again. Again.
We're just all superstars.
Well, he was in the office studying while.
Yeah.
Test is at 8. Now the test is at 8.
And I have to say, I was here at 3 different times throughout the day, and even when there were lines, things were going smoothly, people were getting processed quickly.
And everyone was very pleasant
Yeah.
to deal with.
Yeah.
You would think it wasn't very fluid. There was so many cars outside.
Yeah.
It was just going.
When I came a little bit after 7, I just about had a heart attack. When I saw all the cars, I'm like, oh no. You know, I didn't know what I was going to walk into, but there isn't ever a reason to worry. I'm so confident.
And I will say on my Facebook feed, you know, there was of course a lot of talk about the elections, but I saw several people complain about how they didn't get stickers at their polling place. But here in Milton, everybody gets a sticker.
A sticker for you, a sticker for you, a sticker for you, and people appreciate that.
Yeah.
They really they
Well,
love
they-
it.
Yeah, they comment on their Facebook page that they didn't get a sticker.
Yeah. Next year tattoos.
And Grant thought it was awesome when I gave it to him at like 8 o'clock when I got home. Everybody's.
Dan, anything?
Nope, I think we've done enough damage.
Howie?
We're gonna have salted sand down at the garage this week.
Another service.
Because it snows, yeah. Leaf collection is officially, you're not supposed to put them out in the street after Monday. So, and if, once the snow melts from Friday, we'll just keep picking them up, so.
Are you
Chief?
sure there's gonna be snow, Howie?
Tomorrow, starting tomorrow.
Friday, right? Friday, snow.
It's supposed to snow tomorrow night and Friday morning. But then melt, so, yeah, and melt next week.
So you can go deer hunting.
I hope so.
Chief?
We are 7 days from being up to full staff.
Woohoo!
So I'm going to be celebrating that. Our Andy Reese is doing his final shadow phase of his field training, doing very, very well. And the staff, especially the patrol staff, is taking a big deep breath because it's been a while. So, yeah. So that's my update.
Great. Library?
No new awards yet.
Oh, crushing disappointment.
Just busy planning programs. We had over 700 people attend programs last month. So we're already talking about summer programming too. So can't stop, won't stop.
Inga?
Just so you know, with the 2019 budget, we are not going to be hiring someone to record the council meetings. So what I'm doing right now is working with a local resident to come up with a way that I can essentially move the cameras from here and still record the meetings and have them still be somewhat visually pleasing. And I think it'll be a good system that he's working on. There's going to be a little bit more capability with it. And I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'm going to stop there.
Is there anything else we've forgotten that we want to talk about before we move on to the most exciting part of the night that we've all been waiting for? No, Jerry didn't make the motion, so we got to do team building. He's just so slow tonight. Jerry. All right, so this will be so easy for you. You might want to take notes. It's a little bit long, but here we go. Ham, turkey, or venison, or all of them, or none of them for Thanksgiving.
Turkey.
Turkey.
Turkey?
We already did it and we had turkey.
Well, we're waiting.
I said ham because I came here to Tim.
Hey, bring it, hang it from the tree in front of City Hall.
Oh,
No. It's okay. Howie, I don't know, did I hear from everybody because you're all trying to be kind of slick and talk all at once? Oh, those of us that came late, did you want to chime in?
Like you said, ham.
Ham and turkey.
Already participated.
Oh, ladies,
I'll take whatever. On the table.
as long as you don't have to cook it.
No, I'm not gonna cook it. I'm not cooking, I don't get to vote.
All right, well, we're waiting to adjourn. Next meeting will be November 13th,
Yes, next meeting.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
That has to be at 6.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second.
All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you all very much.